Welcome to a software demonstration brought to you by QPSMR Limited, suppliers of the QPSMR software suite for market research and analysis. Creating a QIF file and interviewing with QPSMR Telin. This is the third of 4 videos designed for those who are interested in using QPSMR for telephone interviewing. Following on from the previous videos where we looked at modifying a questionnaire for CATI, sample management and quota control, we will now create a questionnaire input QIF file and use it to work through some different telephone interviewing situations. A QIF file identifies all of the other files required during the interviewing process. This means that to open a project in the QPSMR Telin software and start interviewing, all your interviewers need to do is double-click the QIF file. Using the QPSMR CATI software from our Coffee questionnaire main window, to create a QIF file we select Supervisor, Questionnaire Input File, Network. Then we choose the input style, telephone, and in the serial numbers section we select issue so that serial numbers are issued automatically. Next we tick sample and browse to locate and open the sample data file that we created in the previous video. This sample data file contains the contact details for all potential respondents. In the quota file section, we then tick quotas, then browse to locate and open the CSV quota file where we previously set the number of completed interviews needed for our project. Next, in the data file main section, we will type in the name of our main data file, Coffee CATI main. When working with CATI projects, a respondent is either part of the sample, that is, before contact has been made, information for these respondents is stored in the sample data file, or an appointment has been made and they are waiting to be called back, information is copied from the sample file and is held in a partial data file, more about this later, or the interview is finished, meaning that it was successful or it was terminated. Data for these respondents is stored in the main data file. Our next step is to decide where the files should be stored. The local store full paths setting may be used if you are running your projects on a network, but for this demonstration we will use the remote setting. More details about both of these settings can be found in the QPSMR CATI on-screen help files. Now we save. To store the QIF files, we will create a new folder called CATI QIF, and double-clicking this folder, we then name the QIF file. Remember, this name will be used by your interviewers to identify the project. We will simply use the default name, Coffee CATI, and save. When asked if we want to copy the other files to this folder, we select yes, and the messages stating a new empty file will be created, we click OK. The final thing we need to do is allocate a next suggested serial. For CATI projects, serial records are automatically issued from the sample data file when the interviewer selects sample from the start of interview dialog box. The next suggested serial number will only be used if an interviewer selects Add New Serial. Normally, this is never selected, but if all electronic sample has been exhausted and just a few more records are needed in order to complete a project, Add New Serial can be used, and sample information added manually during the interview. The last serial input number must be larger than the highest serial number in the sample data file. To differentiate, we will enter 9000 as the last serial input, so if a new record is added, it will have the serial number 9001, then click OK. A message is displayed saying the interviewing QIF files have now been copied, so we can close and then exit the QPSMR CATI program. In the next part of this demonstration, we will use the QIF file to work through some different telephone interviewing situations as if we were an interviewer using the QPSMR telling software. To do this, we locate and double-click the QIF file we have just made. We are then positioned at the Start of Interview dialog box, ready to begin. Looking at this dialog box to call up a contact at random with any shown in the sample selection box, we would simply select Sample. To call up a contact from a particular sample point, in our case a region, we would use the pull down arrow and make our selection. Alongside each sample selection box, the quota left to do is shown, as well as the number of interviews currently in progress. QPSMR will only present contacts that are still required according to the quota set. The total box shows the total number of contacts available in the whole sample file or in a particular sample point if selected, and the fresh box shows the number of contacts that have never been tried. The left box shows the number of contacts that are still live, even though they may have already been tried, contact was not made. This figure includes those already shown in the fresh sample box. Interviewers can use the Quotas View button to see the quotas required, and if the Start of Interview dialog box has been left on screen for a little while, the Refresh Display button can be used to update the sample, quota and appointment details displayed. Firstly, in our demonstration, we will obtain a contact from the Midlands sample point. Notice the To Do box shows that 5 interviews are required from a total of 13 available. We click Sample to retrieve a contact from the Midlands. The telephone number is highlighted, ready for us to call, or the dial button can be used if you have TAPI 3 auto dialing facilities. Remember, the QPSMR telling can also act as a client to a Windows socket server dialer, so predictive dialing can be used. Today, however, we will simply click Interview, and for this respondent complete the entire questionnaire so they become a successful interview. The first entry shown is the intro, so interviewers can read an introduction, then click Next to move on. At the start entry, as this respondent is willing to participate, we select Yes, then click Next, followed by Yes, they drink coffee, enter 4 cups a day, and they normally drink coffee at home. As this respondent only drinks coffee at home and the next entries are filtered on those who drink coffee outside of home, QPSMR automatically skips to Q6. Here the responses appear in random order, the setting we applied in the first CATI video, and we will select Caffeine Strong and Smooth as Silk. At the next entry, our respondent has seen the advert, so we select Yes. Read the text, and at Q7B we will select Fairly Funny. The next 3 entries are displayed in random order. This time the first entry is Q7D, and we select Very Funny. Followed by Q7C, where we will select Fairly Funny. Then at Q7E we select Average. Now, following the interviewer instruction, without reading out the responses, we select Male. Then for the next question, our respondent is up to 30 years old. And at the comments entry, our respondent has no comment to make, so we click None to leave the entry blank, or we could press the F5 key, and we reach the end of our small CATI questionnaire. The final entry displays the result of the interview, in our case successful, and appropriate text for the interviewer to read out. We then click Next to see the end of interview box where a summary of the responses are shown, and we save. The record is stored in the main data file and marked as successful with a response 1 in the ZZZ End questionnaire status entry, and all CATI files are updated. Notice the quota to do box for the Midlands is now showing 4. The Midlands sample point will continue to be selected during this interviewing session unless we choose another sample point, which we will do now. This time we will obtain a contact at random, but the respondent will be ineligible for interview as they do not drink coffee. So we pull down the sample selection list and choose any, then click sample, and after dialing, select interview to begin. After the intro and start entries, we ask Q1, do you ever drink coffee? To which our respondent replies no. As respondents must drink coffee to participate in the survey, and the no response has the ineligible for interview setting applied, an appropriate end message is automatically displayed for the interviewer to read out before clicking next. At the end of interview dialog box, we click Save Questionnaire, and the record will be saved to the main data file, but marked as not eligible, ZZZ Ender 3. CATI files are updated, and we are returned to the start of interview dialog box. Next, we will decide that the phone number for a random contact is unobtainable. Once again, to retrieve a contact from any region, we click Sample, but this time, as we cannot reach the respondent, we will click the Failure button. At the Failed Contact dialog box, we select Unobtainable from the Reason for Failure list, then click the Dead button. The record will be marked as dead in the sample file and will not be presented again. Another thing your interviewers may wish to do is leave a contact to sample, for example if there is no reply when they call the number. To demonstrate this, after clicking Sample and getting no reply, we click Failure. Select No Reply, then leave as sample. The record is returned to the sample data file to be presented again if required. The attempted contact will be counted as one try in ZZZ STR calls made and logged as no reply in the appropriate ZZZ SR call result entry, and all CATI files are updated. Another situation might be if an interviewer clicks Sample but then does not wish to try contacting the respondent. For example, they are suddenly called away or they are testing sample retrieval. In this case, we simply select Not Tried. The ZZZ, SRT and SR entries and the fresh and left numbers remain unchanged as no contact was attempted. Next, we will look at making an appointment. We click Sample, Dial, and then select Interview to begin. After the intro, start, and Q1 entries, our respondent says they are happy to be interviewed, but asks us to call back tomorrow at about 1:30. So, to make an appointment, we press F12 and click Continue Later. Then, from the appointment dialog box, we click Next Day, in the afternoon, and click the Hours plus 1 button once to set the hours to 13, and the Minutes plus 15 button twice to set the minutes to 30. We will then enter 10 in the delay box, the time in minutes before the appointment becomes late. More about this later. Notice the appointment date and time and the delay time is shown. As this is a general survey, we will accept the default priority level and leave the appointment open for any user to call back. Then we set this appointment by clicking OK. The appointment made end message is then automatically displayed, showing the appointment date and time for the interviewer to read out, then click Next. The record is saved into a new automatically created partial data file ready to be continued tomorrow, and we are returned to the start of interview dialog box. We will now look at recontacting a respondent with an appointment. When an appointment is due, it will automatically be displayed along with concise details about it. Interviewers can choose to show only their own appointments, or they can tick the List Any and List Other checkboxes to see all appointments or those for other named interviewers. They can also choose how far in advance appointments should be displayed by making selections from the pull-down list view, choosing from those due in 5 minutes through to those ever due. To demonstrate, we will use the appointment we have just made for tomorrow. So, to see it, we tick to see appointments for any and other users, and from the pull-down we select Ever. For more information about the appointment shown, the Details button can be used. For your own CATI projects, when an appointment is due, the word Now appears under the When heading, and the acceptable delay is counted down. Now will then be displayed for 1 minute, after which time the appointment will be marked as late, with the length of time it is overdue shown. When an appointment is late, the icon changes to an alarm clock and it is displayed for all interviewers. However, today we will simply double-click the serial number for tomorrow's appointment that we have just made, dial and select Interview. We are positioned at the next question that requires an answer, in our case Q2, as F12 was pressed and the appointment made after Q1. We will go on to complete the interview by selecting 2 cups. At Q3 we will select At Home and At Work. And for the percent of coffee consumed at home we will enter 25. And incorrectly 70% for outside of home. As these answers do not add to 100%, the QPSMR tell-in hold filter message appears. We will click Cancel to go back to the last question and enter 75%. Moving on, we then select regular black, espresso and cappuccino. Cappuccino, Turkish, £2.50. Cream companion, yes. Read the text and at Q7B select Very Funny. Remember, the next 3 entries are displayed in random order. We will enter Average, Very Funny, Fairly Funny. Then at the next entry our respondent is female and they are aged over 50. This time at the comments entry the response I don't drink much coffee is given. As we have now come to the end, successful interview is displayed with text for us to read and then click Next. And then Save Questionnaire. The record will be saved to the main data file marked as successful ZZZ Ender 1 and the quota file updated. As we have now finished this part of the demonstration, we will close QPSMR tell-in software. Notice in the CATI QIF folder 3 data files are shown: the sample, the partial, holding appointments, and the main, holding finished interviews. You might now like to take a look at the final video in the QPSMR telephone interviewing series, which explains how to create supervisor reports and tables. For more information about the products and services available from QPSMR Limited, please visit our website www.qpsmr.ltd.uk.